And we're live. Good morning, everyone. Attorney Craig Steger here, practicing in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. It's a Monday morning today, and last week I had done a video about a large punitive damage award that a jury had awarded against Ford over design issues with its Super Duty pickups and the roof design, and whether it was strong enough to withstand predictable rollovers. Today, what I wanted to talk about was a verdict that came out. Um, I think it came out in September. Let me check. Yeah, September of last year in St. Louis. There was a very large verdict, not as large as the Ford verdict, but there was a very large verdict against a company called Wabash National Corporation, which manufactures semi trailers. And if you saw the thumbnail, you would have seen that. And so let me put that picture on the screen here quick. So this is the actual. This is an actual image of the crash, and as you can see, there was a car. There was two men in the car slid into the back of the semi trailer and actually slid up underneath the trailer, and both men in the vehicle were killed as a result of that. Um, you don't have to use your imagination too much to kind of figure out how they died and why they died. But as you can see, the height of the semi trailer is kind of right at eye level of most passenger cars. And so, because of that, semi trailers have been equipped for quite some time. I'm not sure how long, but for quite some time with um, a device on the back. I'm trying to think if I know the name of it. Um, I think it's called an underride prevention thing or something like that. Here, let me show you. Here's a picture, I believe, of the type of trailer that was in the trailer, and the you can see here um, there's two vertical posts that come down, and then a horizontal post. And if you're driving in traffic and you get behind a semi, you'll see something like this. That's what that is for. That bumper, if you will, is primarily, if not exclusively, there for the protection of other motorists who might find themselves um, hitting the back end of one of these semi trailers. Okay, and so going back to the original, and you can see here that the this support structure in the back of the semi failed in this case, and a lawsuit was brought against the trailer manufacturer, not the trucking company. I'm not sure there's any evidence that the trucking company actually did anything wrong. And in fact, I believe, when I was reading some um, articles about this from the trucking news side of things, I think they indicated that neither of the occupants of the car had seatbelts on, and it sounds like perhaps the driver had alcohol. Although that information wasn't presented to the jury for reasons I'm not entirely sure. So, what led to this big verdict was um, not simply the loss of these two young men. I believe they were young men, who had children, or at least a child. And so this whatever of this undercarriage device that was on that trailer, I believe is called the US rig. The design came out around 1985. I'm not sure if before that they just didn't have these on there, and it was basically unchanged until 2007. And this this accident here happened in 2004. Or I'm sorry, the trailer was manufactured in 2004. I'm not sure when the crash happened, but the trailer was in 2004 before they had changed the design. Um, and so, like I said, this is, I believe, what the older version used to look like. And then if you look here, you can see what the newer version looks like. And I believe this is a Wabash trailer here. Um, and you so a few things you'll notice. So if you look at this one, there are four uh, support structures as well as this angled bracing behind it. And then on this one, I believe there is the angled bracing, but there's only two, and it failed. It failed in that case. And so I think modern trailers, current trailers that are on the roadway will have a more robust structure on the back to keep that in place. To you actually want the car to strike that and to stop and and for the front end of the vehicle to collapse in and of itself. That's how cars are designed, to absorb that energy even at relatively high rates of speed. And so what happened here is similar to the Ford verdict, um, is that Wabash, who I guess is I've never heard of them before, but apparently they're a big player in the market, had not really done any testing on this from 1985 to 1996. And then what the what indicates is that um, as of 1998, there was new minimum standards for these that came into effect, and Wabash and actually other trailer manufacturers had essentially colluded together to rather than upgrading their trailers to actually just defend these what they describe as inevitable underride crashes rather than solve the underlying problem. That's similar to what got Ford into problems, especially back in the era of the Pinto, is they were aware of the problem and did an economic analysis and decided it was cheaper to defend lawsuits and pay out damages than to fix the problem. And the plaintiff's attorneys in this case figured that out and then presented that to the jury, and that is a main reason why they got hammered with such a big punitive damage award. Is the corporation was aware of the problem and made a financial decision that put um, the safety of other motorists second to their financial interest. And that's one of the reasons for punitive damages, to keep corporations and actors from postponing or just outright not uh, taking safety into consideration for financial reasons. And it also sounds um, that like Wabash and other companies had actively lobbied the federal government not to update its standards. I believe, as I understand it, this older version um, met the existing 1998 standards, but they actively worked together to keep the standards from being increased to a more robust system, which I'm not sure may be in place now. I'm not sure about that. And so this was a verdict. I believe. Let me see here. I believe that the verdict was $6 million per family member. I'm trying to find that. Yes. So the verdict was a total of $462 million. Of that, $6 million went to each man's family as compensatory damages for loss of their life, which is a total of $12 million. And then there was $450 million in punitive damages. So that punitive damage claim is is going to be most likely based in large part on the fact that the company knew or should have known that its existing um, the existing technology, the existing design of its semi trailers, which were on the road, were inadequate in causing injuries, and not only injuries, almost certain death in these cases, and didn't do anything about it. And that's sort of one of the reasons for punitive damages is to take that financial incentive away from corporations to make um, necessary and appropriate adjustments, even if it means recalling and retrofitting um, unsafe equipment on the roadway, cars, trucks, semi trailers, things of that nature. Now that verdict came out in September of 2024 in St. Louis, Missouri. I would anticipate, I'm not sure exactly, but I would anticipate that that has been appealed, and that there will, I'm sure that they will attempt to exhaust all post verdict remedies, which the time for that is probably past now. I would imagine that the trailer company brought motions after verdict to try and set that aside. There was probably some significant motions leading up to the trial over evidence. I think, as I mentioned, there was disputes about whether introduction of the alcohol level of the driver of the car, as well as whether they were wearing seatbelts, whether that would have made a difference. I believe there was um, significant fights in the trial court about whether that evidence would come in or not. So I think you could probably expect that on appeal or post-trial motions and then appeal, that the trailer manufacturer will fight all of those again and say that it influenced this verdict. Um, there are a variety of ways that punitive damage awards can be attacked on appeal. Number one, they could argue that punitive damages are not warranted at all, that there was just no basis. Punitive damage, now this varies by state, but it typically involves something egregious, even more than reckless, intentional disregard, that kind of language is usually what is required to support a punitive damage award. And punitive damages are typically bifurcated from the compensatory award, which means that it's typically the same jury but different phases of the trial, so that the jury, for example, in the initial trial, when the jury awarded 6 million dollars each to these men's family, it's possible, if not likely, that the jury did not hear about the fact that the company was aware of these past of these issues, that probably wasn't aware, introduced evidence that they had lobbied the federal regulators to avoid changing the standards. That information is stuff that typically, the financial wealth of the company would not come until the punitive damage phase of the trial. In most instances, in most trials, that is how it would play out. I don't know how St. Louis does things, what their rules are in Missouri. Maybe it's a little different. Maybe if the jury hears that um, in the initial trial, that can have a big difference. But these are called, in the defense industry, these are called nuclear verdicts. I think nuclear verdicts are verdicts over $10 million, and I think they have another term. Can't think of it what it's called for verdicts over $100 million. So these ones make it. These ones uh, get attention drawn to them, and there's another one that I'll be talking about this week involving Werner Trucking. They had a huge verdict that was controversial. Um, I think it was in last year as well, or a couple within the last couple years. I'll be talking about that one. Um, Now, punitive damages, just so we're clear, um, can arise in a lot of different situations. Where I've seen punitive damages raised is often in car accident situations where the other driver was intoxicated at the time. That can give rise to punitive damages in some states. Now, the caveat being that if it's an individual that engages in that, um, oftentimes there's no insurance coverage for that. There's no insurance coverage under your personal auto policy or homeowners. There probably isn't coverage for punitive damages, and so you can get that award, but you may never collect that because most people don't have tens of millions of dollars or even millions of dollars sitting around to pay these kinds of awards. And even the trucking companies and their insurance companies probably don't pay punitive damages. That's a common insurance exclusion, is for punitive damages, and so that's why these verdicts tend to be brought again. These kinds of claims and these verdicts tend to get entered against corporations, which, at least in theory, may have the financial resources to actually pay them. So yeah, so this sometimes you can. I don't know if you can get punitive damages against police most of the time. Um, at least around here in Wisconsin, at least we have there's immunity. There are statutory caps on liability against police departments, and I don't know if they would have insurance for that or not. I'd have to look into that. Um, so let's see here. I know that there is a lot of discussion happening in the trucking industry and the trucking insurance industry on what to do about these quote unquote nuclear verdicts, because I don't care how big you are, a $450 million verdict can take a can take a chunk out of your bottom line and your viability as a company. And so I think they're going to be looking very hard. This is the type of stuff that tends to give rise to tort reform, damage caps, things like that. The so-called McDonald's coffee case, which actually I'll maybe do a video on that this week, kind of explaining what really went into that and why the jury awarded such a large verdict in that case, including punitive damages. Um, yeah, so there's a couple of cases that I'm looking at, that I'm looking at doing a video on, of people that were wrongfully incarcerated. So people that were wrongly charged and convicted of crimes. If they get out, they tend to be awarded fairly substantial damages, not necessarily punitive damages, unless you can really show the police were just outright framing them. Typically, the evidence isn't quite that um, offensive. It's a little more like they got overzealous. They uh, or the evidence that they had at the time, the technology, maybe it's DNA evidence, fingerprint evidence, whatever at the time that the conviction happened, may not, may no longer be reliable, and so sometimes you can have those things happen where someone's been incarcerated and they get out, and then they're, reasonably so, they're compensated for what happened to them. Um, yeah, body cams have made a big difference in the criminal cases and then the civil liability cases that stem from them, because at least when they're on, they tend to capture stuff that, at least before, used to be a sort of a he said she said situation. So I'm all for cops having body cams, and in fact, I think um, I'd like to see more people have vehicle cams in their vehicles, dash cams. A lot of trucks, semis, and trucking companies are putting dash cams in now. They are, those are two-edged swords, because on the one hand, they like those if it shows that the um, other motorists were the ones that acted wrongly. Maybe they cut off the semi in traffic or whatever. But I think you're going to see a change in movement on this, and not having dash cams in semis, because they also show um, very clearly when the trucking companies and the drivers are not paying attention, not being safe. So it can actually work against them. They put these dash cams, these cab cams in these semis to try and protect themselves, and sometimes that can actually be used against them, which is why it's really important, if you're involved in a crash involving a trucking company. It's really important that that letters go out to the companies right away to preserve that. So it's really a good idea to talk to a lawyer immediately after a crash involving a commercial motor vehicle, because stuff disappears, and you can get an attorney to send a preservation letter trying to minimize the chances that stuff disappears. If stuff disappears after they receive a preservation letter, then that can be a real problem for them at trial. So it's just a good idea, if you're involved in a crash involving a commercial motor vehicle, to talk to an attorney as soon as possible. There's just stuff gets lost. Um, Stuff gets lost with trucking cases that doesn't necessarily get lost in your run of the mill car accident case. Okay. I think that's what I wanted to show today. I'll be back. I should be back tomorrow. If people have any questions about any of that, feel free to leave in the comments. If I'm able to answer that, I'll do so. Sometimes I need to do a little research and do a follow-up video, but I hope you found that helpful and interesting. And thanks for watching, everyone. And until next time, everyone, have a good one.